Welcome to the Mussar HaTorah podcast for Parshas Ki Savo. Join us this week as we explore the weekly Parsha, uncovering valuable insights and striving to become the best versions of ourselves through Mussar teachings. This week's Parsha describes the declaration a person makes after properly distributing their maasros, their tithes. Chazal in Megillah Daf Chaf Amud Beis refers to this declaration by a striking name, Vidui Meiser, the confession of Meiser. That name is hard to understand. Look at what the declaration actually says. Lo avarti mimitzvosecha v'lo shachachti. I have not transgressed your commandments, nor have I forgotten. There is no admission of wrongdoing anywhere in these words. If anything, the person is declaring the opposite, that they did everything right. Why would Chazal call this a vidui, a confession, when there is no sin being confessed? Rav Yecheskel Weinfeld Shlita brings a Sefarnu who finds a confession hidden inside a single detail of the declaration. The moment we say we have removed sanctified produce from our home, before the sin of the golden calf, the service that would eventually belong to the Kohanim and the Levium was meant to be carried out by the firstborn of every family. Had that arrangement remained in place, Truma and Meiser would never have needed to leave the house at all. They could simply have been given to a family's own firstborn son. There would have been nothing to remove. The fact that we now have to remove this produce from our home and hand it to somebody else's household is itself a quiet confession. It is an admission that something changed. The closeness a family once had with its own service to Hashem was lost, all because of the Egel HaZahav. Think about what that closeness would have looked like. Truma and Meiser exist so that those who serve Hashem on behalf of the nation can be supported, freed from having to farm or trade for a living, so that they can dedicate themselves fully to that service. If every family's own firstborn were the one doing that service, giving Meiser would have meant something entirely different. A father would not be sending his crop out the door to a stranger's household. He would be handing it directly to his own son, watching his own child carry that gift into Avodas Hashem. The mitzvah of Meiser would have stayed inside the family, a lived expression of that family's own connection to serving Hashem. This is what changed. Because of the Egel HaZahav, the privilege of that service moved from the firstborn to the Levium. Every time we now perform this mitzvah and have to say the words, removed from my house, we are, without realizing it, marking the distance that a specific failure created between us and a service that once could have stayed inside our own homes. Rav Weinfeld offers a second approach as well, built on a line from Mussaf of Rosh Hashana. Ki ata zocher kol hanishkachos. For you are the one who remembers forever all that is forgotten. The Kedushas Levi explains this to mean that Hashem remembers precisely what we ourselves have let go of. Applied to a sin, the idea works in a comforting direction. If we forget our own wrongdoing, if we let it go rather than repaying it, Hashem, in effect, remembers it for us, meaning it stays in the category of something to be dealt with through tshuva and mercy. However, if we hold on to it ourselves, carrying the guilt and doing the inner work of confronting it, Hashem forgets it. Of course, the reverse would be true with our mitzvos. Hashem does not want a mitzvah performed once and then filed away as finished business, something we did and can now rest on. A mitzvah is meant to stay alive in us, to keep shaping how we act tomorrow, not just how we felt today. If we perform a mitzvah and then forget about it, content to let it become old news, Hashem remembers it. If instead we keep it present, aware, still asking something of us, Hashem can let it go because it is still doing its work in us. Read this way, when the person in the Vidui Meiser says, I have not forgotten, Rav Weinfeld suggests this may be pointing at exactly this. The good that was done here has not been set aside as finished. It is still remembered, still active, still shaping the person going forward. There is something almost counterintuitive here. Our instinct might be that the goal is to do a mitzvah and move on, to feel settled, to consider the matter closed, to stop thinking about it. That instinct, applied to our mitzvos, can quietly turn into complacency. A person who gives Meiser once and never thinks about it again has technically fulfilled an obligation, but has not let that act of generosity shape anything else. The Vidui Meiser seems to be teaching the opposite lesson. The goal is not to close the book on our good deeds, but to keep the book open so that what we have already done keeps informing what we still have left to do. As Jews, we understand that serving Hashem is the one thing that carries real weight. Every other good this world has to offer means nothing if it isn't in service of that. A covenant means we are never left alone. Hashem remains directly, consistently involved with us, not occasionally, not from a distance, but as an ongoing presence in every part of our story. That is true whether the moment is one of closeness or one of distance. The Vidoy Meiser we've been discussing captures this closeness. A person standing before Hashem describing exactly how they cared for the needs of others in a relationship active enough to require constant accounting. Even the Tochacha Moshe gives to the nation later in this parsha can be understood in the same way. The difficult, drawn-out history of persecution the Jewish people have endured across centuries is, in a sense, that rebuke playing out across the generations. It would have been easy to see only the hardship in that, to focus on how much has been endured and to feel, understandably, that we have been abandoned to it. However, a covenant that never lets go, even through the hardest chapters, is still a covenant. A parent who never stops correcting a child has not stopped being involved in that child's life. Often, the opposite is true. Difficult as our history has been, we can choose to see it for what it also reveals. Hashem has never let us go. That constant attention, even when it takes the form of tochacha, rebuke, is itself the honor. This week, let's all try to catch ourselves filing something away too quickly. Let's pick one mitzvah or one good decision we made recently and ask honestly, have we let it become finished business? Something we did and now take for granted. Let's spend a few minutes bringing it back to life, thinking about why we did it, what it demanded of us, and how it might still have something to teach us today. Let's all try to keep our mitzvos present rather than past. A declaration with no sin in it still earns the name confession because tucked inside of it is an admission of distance we didn't choose and a reminder never to let our good deeds go quiet. Both point to the same truth. Hashem remains involved in our lives at every turn, in closeness and in hardship alike. That constant involvement, even when it is hard to carry, is the deepest honor we have. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Mussar HaTorah podcast. May we all merit to keep our good deeds alive and ever present, and to recognize Hashem's constant involvement in our lives as the honor it truly is. Have a good Shabbos.